In London, our former Moscow correspondent, we turn to her so often for insights on stories coming out of Russia. Breyer, we are looking now at live pictures from a polling station in Moscow. Gives you a sense of the election workers there. And we have seen, and here comes someone else, people popping in to vote. This is beginning today, and it will continue over the next 3 days. So what are you seeing in these early images? What are you seeing and hearing out of Moscow this morning?
Well, that's right. I mean, and Heather, this is the first time where Russia has held a presidential election over several days, so 3 days. And it's also the first time where there's going to be electronic voting in a few dozen regions across Russia, including, of course, the cities of Moscow and St. Petersburg. And then also, as you have this vote going on with inside the country, you have votes happening in the territories in Ukraine that Russia occupies: Kherson, Donetsk, Luhansk, Zaporizhia. And we were speaking with an individual in Mariupol this morning, which is, of course, occupied by Russia. And this individual described kind of a scene of officials walking around with ballot boxes, basically being guarded by armed Russian soldiers. So I think that really kind of paints a picture of just how tense it is. And of course, to voters, it's a very strong reminder of who is in charge there. And we, of course, are talking about the election, but this is really a foregone conclusion. I mean, Vladimir Putin is expected to be reelected in a landslide, securing his 5th term as president. And that's really because he's not facing any kind of meaningful opposition. There are 3 other candidates whose names are on the ballot. They're all seen as Kremlin loyalists. None of them are against the war. In fact, the only 2 people who had kind of come forward and put their names down to be candidates were barred from running. And of course, all other, major opposition figures are either in exile, in jail, or in Alexei Navalny's case, now dead.
2 weeks ago, Breyer, his funeral, and that was such a rare show of public political dissent at his funeral, the thousands of people who were there. Is there a sense that there will be protests over the election weekend, or will his death affect things at all in this vote?
Well, I think it will in some respects, because one of his last kind of political acts was calling for a protest vote. And of course, when we talk about protests in Russia, I mean, there can't be mass gatherings because people get arrested right away. So instead, what he had been calling for was voters to kind of overwhelm the polling stations at noon on Sunday and to essentially either vote for somebody besides Putin or to spoil their ballot in some way. And Navalny's widow, Yulia Navalnaya, has basically, taken up that call. He's urging people to do that. We do expect that there will be, some crowds, probably most likely in Moscow, in St. Petersburg. We also will see that at Russian embassies in Europe. I know that they're expecting a crowd to go to the London embassy here, and they're calling for people to basically spoil their ballot by, checking 2 boxes or even writing down Alexei Navalny's name. But I think you do have kind of a tense situation outside of Russia, too. In Latvia, where there's a lot of Russian citizens, the government has said there that they're going to be checking people's documents before they go into the embassy. So the Latvian police will be checking their passports because they don't want anybody showing up basically supporting Putin. And so this morning, producer Corinne Semenoff was in Riga. She went down there and she could see that there was an elderly couple that had been basically taken away by police. She took some video of that there because they refused to show their passports and their documents. And the other thing that we do have video of that I want to point out is a sign of protest that we've seen in Russia today. And it was somebody who went to the ballot box and poured green ink into the box itself. We do have video of that too, I believe. And Russia has said now that they have opened up a criminal investigation into that act.
So you're right. There are the pictures of that particular act. And again, the investigation underway. I suppose, Breyer, one would anticipate seeing a big victory speech from Putin after the votes are counted. But what then? What will happen in Russia after this election?
Well, yes, and the inauguration date is already set for May 7th. And I think because it's kind of a foregone conclusion that Putin will still be in power after this. There's been a lot of speculation about what the government might do. And I think there's been a lot of political analysis around whether Putin will try to use a strong show of support to push through some perhaps more unpopular measures. And one of the ideas that has been circulating quite a bit is the potential for another round of mobilization, so basically conscription. The government has not confirmed this at all, but it is a worry for many people. In fact, I spoke with a 25-year-old man living in Russia who said he plans to leave within the next week because he really does fear that there could be another round of mobilization. We know that Russia has hundreds of thousands of troops in Ukraine, and there is talk now about Russia trying to launch another offensive later in the spring or in the summer. And so I think there is a sense of kind of anxiety that there could be another mobilization in the months ahead.